Hey guys, Triple B here. There's a lot of interesting new cards that just got revealed over at a Champions League in Japan. Getting to see a new set called Crimson Haze that they'll be getting. It'll be making up our set coming in, I believe it's May. But yeah, let's get into the new cards. So the first cards we're going to be seeing are the EXs. There's 3 of them so far shown for this set. Blood Moon Ursaluna EX. I'll be honest, I wasn't even aware of this Pokemon. It was from one of the DLCs in the Scarlet and Violet games, which admittedly, I haven't played. I saw it and was like, oh, it's like Terminator Ursaring, and that's kind of what it seems like it is. So this card, it's got an ability similar to Radiant Charizard. So for each prize card your opponent's taken, the attack cost is going to be 1 colorless energy less. Its attack costs 5 colorless energy, so if they're down to 1 prize remaining, you could attack for free, or just chuck like a DTE or any colored energy onto it. Like, you could run this in a Baxcalibur deck, for example, and charge it up pretty cheap. Don't think you'd be using that because you just charge up Chin-Pow, but as an example, you can kind of splash this into a number of decks just as an additional attacker to bring out in the late game if you're in a pinch. I'm not sure if it's going to say heaps of play. 260 HP though, like it's pretty bulky, and the ability is definitely interesting. What are your thoughts on this? Because I think as long as Radiant Charizard's in rotation, that just seems like the better option. Does 10 more damage, it's a single prizer, but this is definitely worth considering. There is a Screamtail EX also being shown today. Basic Pokemon, Psychic type, and it's an ancient Pokemon, so you could be using like Professor Sada to get some energy onto this. Chuck that ancient boost capsule on it, give it a little bit more health since it only has 190 HP, brings it up to 250. It's not too bad. The main thing we're seeing here though is the first attack, Sudden Shriek. You can only use this attack if you go second, and only during your first turn of the game, so very situational. You need to get this out, get it in the active, 1 colorless energy onto it, so you could use like a jet energy to bounce it to the active. That's not too bad. But then your opponent can't play any supporter cards from their hand on their next turn. So if your opponent goes first, they can't play any supporter cards. You go second, you play this, you get this attack off. Your opponent's second turn, they still can't play any supporters. It's definitely a way to kind of disrupt them and make their board setup and game state just really tricky to kind of get the ball rolling. Like, you're very dependent on supporters to get yourself into the game, drawing you cards, finding key pieces, so this could definitely see play. A little bit of disruption is always good. I could see maybe into like Roaring Moon EX or an Ancient Box deck sneaking this in there, just because if you're not getting all the pieces online, like Roaring Moon EX, ideally you want to be attacking the first turn of the game, but if you're not getting all the energy in the discard, you're not hitting the Sada, Moltres V is going to be rotating, so like being able to go E-switch from that onto it, that play's gone, so having something just to kind of buy yourself a bit more time could definitely be worth considering. Also gonna pop my chair up here, I'm kind of sinking a little bit. But the next EX we're getting to see is Iron Thorns EX. It's got an ability that's kind of like the Path to the Peak replacement, because while this Pokemon's in the active spot, Rule Box Pokemon in play don't have any abilities. It does exclude future Pokemon, so they'll get around it. It's kind of like a buffed up Klefki, because Klefki just shuts off abilities of basic Pokemon when it's in the active. This will shut off everything. So it'll be shutting down like Lugia V-Star, Arceus V-Stars. It'll be shutting off Charizard EXs. Obviously they can use Boss to get this out of the active. Escape Rope's going to be rotating, so that makes it a little trickier. Prime Catcher will also be able to get around it, but being able to just slap this in the active and be like, all right, find a way around it. Like into Charizard, you're then forcing them to go, you have to use Boss or you have to use Prime Catcher, or you can't use your Charizard or your Pidgeots. That's kind of sick, actually. I do like that. I don't know that every deck will have space for this. Obviously, having 4 Retreat, it's pretty bulky to get out of the active. You'd have to commit a switch card to it, or you can be using Future Boost Capsule. Obviously, gives it, I believe it's free retreat? Free retreat or 2 less retreat? I'll double check that. I believe it's free retreat though. So you could check that on there. It's free retreat. Yeah, no, it's definitely free retreat because you use it on Iron Hands. It's a way to kind of pivot it around. So if there was like a hit and run deck that started seeing play, like maybe Golisopod EX, for example, someone wants to make that work, you just go Golisopod, hit them, bounce into Iron Thorns EX, shut off their abilities. Definitely worth considering. I feel like you'd still probably run that with like Mimikyu, but it's another tool to have in your box, and I could definitely see this seeing some play. We are getting to see a new Applin line with its new evolution. This one I did know about. I knew he came out with the DLCs. I was aware of this one, the Terminator Ursaring. That one somehow got past me, but Applin, it's got Find a Friend, search your deck for a Pokemon, put it into your hand. It's not too bad. It's going to evolve up into Diplin that kind of has like a bit of a gust attack, so Grass Energy, Fire Energy, switch one of your opponent's bench Pokemon to the active, do 70 to it. Your dragon types, you're not hitting weakness into anything. That's sort of just like, hey, is your opponent trying to sit up a evolution piece? Like, do they have one Charmander on the bench? Bring it into the active, knock it out. Or they have one Frigibax, bring it into the active, knock it out. Like, there will be situations where this does make sense. I feel like it's more so just another dragon tool for like Regidrago V-Star decks though, because it can copy the attacks of any dragon Pokemon. This is in the discard. You then have that gust option for those examples we've already mentioned. Maybe we get some sort of Applin box deck, because like there was, I can't think of their names. There was the two Appleton and the other one that had interesting attacks. It was like 70 damage for each special energy your opponent has in play, and I think 50 damage for each ability your opponent has in play. So like maybe we get more of those and you make like an Apple box deck in the future. Like that'd be kind of sick. I'd be down for that. But it just seems like another interesting tool for the box. Finian getting a new card. It's got Beckin. You get to put a supporter card from your discard pile into your hand. For control decks, this could definitely see play, like being able to loop Eries, being able to loop like Roxannes or Ionos in the late game. It's definitely an interesting one. I can't see any other decks really eyeing this up though. I feel like we have better options. Like you either check a TM on something, like Evolution TM, use that as an attack to get yourself set up. Like Beckin, I don't really see being that great. There's also it's Clefairy's pre-evolution. Cleffa? There's like Cleffa that it has an attack that costs no energy. Like all the baby Pokemon has attacks that cost you nothing. Cleffa can be getting you into a new 7-card hand without having to attach energy to it and has free retreat. Like for early game, I feel like that's what you use. Fion, it's like, yeah, you use a supporter, get it back, use it again next turn. Like maybe could be similar to like Mew from Celebrations, where you're kind of just chucking it in the active as like you're expecting it to get knocked out. And if it doesn't, it's not the end of the world. Buys you a bit of time, gets you another supporter for the following turn. It's definitely an interesting one, but I don't see it seeing play outside of probably pre-release, to be honest. New supporter card, we're getting Perrin. You get to reveal 2 Pokemon from your hand, shuffle them into your deck, then search your deck for 2 Pokemon. Well, as many Pokemon as you chose to, because up to 2, you could just put 1 back, search your deck for up to 1. If you put 2, search your deck for up to 2. It's effectively like Pokemon communication, except a bit more flexibility, like you can dig a little bit more, but it is on a supporter card, which I feel like is going to hold it back. Pokemon Communication was an item card, so you could use it as well as other supporter cards. Your supporters, you're likely wanting better utility out of them or draw more cards. Like just getting 2 Pokemon, just use an Ultra Ball. Like use an Ultra Ball and then use a research, get into 7 more cards. You're probably finding the Pokemon or another Ultra Ball to find the other Pokemon. Seems very situational. Maybe GLC, I could see this coming up just as a way to kind of bounce things around, but we do have a lot of Pokemon search in that format already. So I feel like it's another one of those. It's probably going to come up in a pre-release kit and won't see play other than that. We are getting some reprint cards though. The first one's being Enhanced Hammer. Discard a special energy attached to your opponent's Pokemon. That's nice. There's not a lot of decks currently running special energy. Obviously, Arceus with double turbo energy is a big one. Lugia is starting to make a comeback. Over in Japan, we're seeing builds that are running the Chinchino. So yeah, Lugia coming back, having enhanced hammers for that's definitely interesting. Mist energy coming out in Temporal Forces for decks that want to get rid of that. Instead of having to rely on that your stadium's going to stick, you can just use enhanced hammer and get the energy out immediately. So that's cool, because like we do have Temple of Sinnoh that shuts off special energy, but it's just, hey, I want it completely out of the game. You can use this. Similar to, I think it was Fan of Waves though, it would bounce a special energy from your opponent's Pokemon back into their deck. It didn't see a lot of play, so I'm not sure that Enhanced Hammer will, but the fact that this is completely removing the card from the game does give it a 1-up on that card, right? Because like, you Fan of Waves, they can just get back into that energy later. You Enhanced Hammer, it's gone. Like if they have 1 copy of V-Guard energy or 1 copy of Mist energy, just remove it from the game. It's a lot better of an effect to be able to use. We're getting a new Stadium card as well, Community Center, and it's actually going to combo with another card here, Caretaker, which we'll get to in just a moment. But the Stadium card, once during each player's turn, if you've played a supporter card, you can heal 10 damage from each of your Pokemon. So if spread decks start seeing a bit of a comeback, you could use this to negate that. There's a lot of decks that Sableye, for example, in Lost Box decks, they'll want to be setting up specific damage counters. Community Center makes them work a little bit harder because it's like, well, I'm just going to remove 1 from everything. messes up their math a little bit, so it's interesting. Maybe for tanky decks you could be using it, but steel Pokemon seem like kind of the tanks that we're going to be getting, and there has been a recently revealed stadium we'll get in Temporal Forces, reducing steel damage taken by 30, so I think Community Center is just... It's not going to be better than that, but there could be other niche situations, like Gardevoir EX, for example, could be using it, but they also have Moonlit Hill, where they can discard a Psychic Energy from hand to heal 30 from everything. It's a lot stronger, but it's not bad. Caretaker, though, is the one that's going to combo with this. So you get to draw 2 cards, then if Community Center is in play, shuffle Caretaker back into your deck. I've seen a bit of a back and forth around the translation of this card, because some people are saying it goes back into the deck, some people are saying it goes back into your hand. So let me know what you think it is in the comments down below. Always keen for it. I don't read Japanese, so I'm just kind of trusting the translations off PokeBeach, and do appreciate them for putting these out here for everybody. But it's an interesting card. So like you could, if it's back into deck, you could be creating an infinite loop for control decks, right? Like if you have 3 of this in your deck, Community Center's in play, late game, they have no way to bump the stadium. You're just going Caretaker, I draw 2, you're getting your other 2 Caretakers, and you're putting the 3rd Caretaker back into the deck, and then just kind of constantly looping it. You'd probably run 4, just in case any are prized, and also so like when you draw 2, then the next turn you're drawing the 1 and you don't have stuff in the deck, so yeah, you'd probably want to run 4, but it's an interesting loop that potentially is there. If it's back into hand, though, it's a little bit different. Basically, it's a draw 3 card then, right? So for decks that want large hand size to do damage, like Tinkaton EX, for example, it's an interesting one for them. Like being able to draw 3 without having to sacrifice a card is actually a value. If you're using a supporter card, it's going in the discard, you're drawing 3, so it is seen as a +3. This, though, you're using a supporter card, it's not actually going in the discard. Back into your hand, it's a +3, but you haven't lost anything from the deck. Like the Tinkaton variant, or not Tinkaton variant, but the other one I was mentioning, like you're losing that card, so you are losing pieces from your deck slowly. This, it's kind of just like a bit of a loop. I hope that makes sense. I feel like I'm going on a bit of a tangent here. Another reprint card we're getting, though, is Lucky Helmet as a tool card. So this, when it's on your active Pokemon, if it takes any damage, you get to draw 2 cards. Even if it gets knocked out, you're drawing 2 cards. With it being a largely 2-shot format at the moment, like Stage 2 EXs, they're not often getting 1-shot. They can tank a hit. If you're able to draw some cards off of that, it's pretty good value. Like as a one-off index, just to add a little bit more draw power, I could definitely see this card coming up, and it's definitely an interesting tool to be able to add to the box. So another Ace Spec's been revealed, Unfair Stamp. It's a comeback mechanic, so you can only use this card if one of your Pokemon was knocked out during your opponent's last turn. You're going to make both players shuffle their hands into their deck. You get to draw 5, your opponent draws 2. So it's sort of like Roxanne, except it's a item card, so you can still use another supporter, like you could Boss, or you could hit him with an Iono. Probably not Iono, because then you might be giving them a 6-card hand, but just as an example, like you could use Research after that to dig a little bit more into your deck. It's definitely an interesting setup. And the fact that you can be using this early in the game, like if they knock out something on the first turn of the game, you go Arven, you get a tool, you get this. You're getting draw power even though you've used Arven, and you're disrupting your opponent. I like it. Like it's kind of broken, but I like it, and I could definitely see this seeing play. Like I know when the Ace Specs initially got revealed, everyone saw Prime Catcher and they saw the other ones and they're like, oh well, everyone's just gonna run Prime Catcher. Like that's the one. It's like Radiant Greninja. Every deck just runs that Radiant. But with some of these new Ace Specs we're getting revealed, yeah, it's actually going to be a tricky choice to make. That's all we've gotten revealed for the set so far, though. Definitely keen to see what else comes out, because there have been some interesting pieces. There has been some other news this week. We didn't really do a weekly news roundup, apologies. So I'll just quickly take a look through, as we did get to see what the pre-release cards we're going to be getting for Temporal Forces are. Haven't got to see the art, but we do know what the cards are going to be. So one of the decks will be getting Feraligatr. It's got the ability that you can put 5 damage counters onto it to do 120 more damage, be doing 280. In a pre-release format, though, it's effectively putting yourself to 130 health remaining to get a really big knockout. Like if your opponents are running an EX Pokemon, could be interesting, but the fact that you do 160 damage already, I don't think you're going to be triggering the ability too often. We're getting the Matang as another one of the promos, so its ability Metal Maker, you can look at the top 4 cards of your deck once per turn, choose any number of basic energy you find there, a basic metal energy you find there, and attach them to your Pokemon in any way you like. So it's a good way to kind of charge itself up. If we do get the Metagross in the decks with it, then I think it'll be fine. If we're just getting it as a stage 1 though, like if you're just going to get like a 3-2 line of Metang in the deck and then some basic steel Pokemon to go along with it, that could also be interesting. So I feel like this is probably the promo I'm going to be hoping to get, just because it seems like a really interesting card to play around with. But what do you think? Well, I guess we've only covered 2. I should probably show you the other 2 before I ask that, but we're also getting Koraidon. So it's an ancient Pokemon. There is ancient box decks that are doing really well in Japan. Seems like an interesting card to have in pre-release, as long as the kits include high counts of ancient Pokemon, as its attack Primeval Battering does a multiplier of 30 for each of your ancient Pokemon in play. So if you can fill up your entire bench, the active also counts. You'd be doing 180 damage with it. It's pretty solid. It's on a basic Pokemon. You'd likely get Sada in the kits. I'm thinking you probably would, at least one. They like to at least like include something to kind of power these up. So if you got that, it seems like a pretty broken kit. Second attack, Shred, 130 damage. It's also pretty solid. You are 10 damage off knocking out a Mirror Match Koraidon though, so I don't think 130 is quite enough to justify it. You're mainly going to be going for the first attack for this. And the last promo is going to be the Miraidon. So it has Speed Peak, 40 damage for a colorless energy. Search your deck for up to 2 basic energy and attach them to your future Pokemon in any way you'd like. So it can be charging itself up to do 160 damage for 2 lightning and a psychic, or be setting up your bench to be in a pretty solid spot. I think of all the kits, Miraidon will likely be the most consistent. As long as you get like 2 copies of it. If you're just getting 1 copy of it, maybe not. But if you're getting 2 copies of it and multiple future Pokemon in the kits to be able to charge up and you hit some future Pokemon off your packs, that seems like a really fast deck that's going to be doing some pretty scary damage. These are all good cards. Like, they're all playable. Future Box, Ancient Box are both decks that are seeing success in Japan. For Alligator, for the Believers, there's ways to make it work. And Metang is also another one of those. It seems like a bit of a fringe deck, but I think if you get the right deck list together, it can be pretty scary. And the other news we had revealed this week, Twilight Masquerade is going to be our May set. So we're getting Temporal Forces in March, and then May we're going to be getting this. This will be including the Crimson Haze cards most likely. We haven't had that officially announced, but Crimson Haze is coming out next. It should be in here. And then there's also going to be Masks of Change is what they're saying here. So it's going to be including, I don't even know these guys' names. They're in the DLC. Gotta say somewhere in here. Ogre Pawn. The Ogre Mask promo. Okay. It's got masks. I'm sorry, guys. I haven't gone back to Scarlet and Violet. The low frame rates kind of killed it for me. Like, do you guys play the DLCs? Are they worth picking up? Should I revisit the games? But the last bit of news is Worlds 2026 has apparently been announced in San Francisco. There's been some leaks just around, I guess, the bookings of it. Obviously, with being such a large event, it does make sense they'd probably book it out a year or 2 in advance. Also, wouldn't surprise me that people just like to make things up. It's 2 years away. We still don't even know the official dates of Worlds 2024 yet. Like, we know it's in Hawaii. We don't have specific days. So the fact that this is coming out 2 years ahead, like, I wouldn't hold your breath. Obviously, things can definitely change, and nothing has actually been confirmed. That's it for the news this week, though. It was mostly just new card reveals, but I added in a bit of the news just for funsies. Hope you enjoyed it. If you did, make sure to hit that subscribe button if you haven't already, just to keep up with the shenanigans, and that like button if you enjoyed the video. Till next time, though, stay golden.